Hello friends, today is March 15 and all across the globe March 15th is being observed as the International Day to Combat Islamophobia. We are all aware of this fact that last year a resolution was passed in the United Nations, and as a result of that resolution, March 15th has been decided as the day to combat Islamophobia. So this is the context that we are today discussing Islamophobia, the challenges posed to Muslim society, Islam as a religious community, and all kinds of hatred that is being directed towards Muslim community. Like you, I also believe that Muslim society is not homogeneous. Muslim society is also divided like any other religious community on caste, on class, region, gender, nation state, areas. Friends, first of all, let me try to give you definition of what Islamophobia is. I have always said that defining something is not an easy thing. Nevertheless, let me here refer to ready-made report of Britain in 1997. It defines Islamophobia as hatred, hostility towards Islam and Muslims perpetuated by a series of closed views that imply and attribute negative and derogatory stereotypes and belief to Muslims. I have taken this quotation from a book, The Challenge of Pluralism in the 20th Century, 2011. So if I try to summarize what this report is talking about, the problem Islamophobia is that it is hatred, hostility towards Islam and Muslims, and it is the result of closed views. That is, in other words, I could say that a stereotype, prejudice are very much active in the field of Islamophobia. Let me give you another example. If you see a snake and if you are threatened by a snake, it could be understood. It could be called reasonable. But if you have not seen a snake, you have just by mistake looked at rope, and if you are calling rope or if you are perceiving rope as a snake and you feel that your life is threatened, then that reality is not based on concrete objective reality, but it is based on perception, illusion and prejudice. So what is happening that all the charges which are being directed against the Muslim community, in most of the cases they are not true, but they are constructed, they are perceived, and they are being created for particular political goals. Muslim societies have their own problem. I am not denying it. Rich Muslims are in their own country, in their own region, exploiting the poor Muslims. There is a question of caste very much seen, particularly in subcontinent. Islam does not justify caste. The conditions of women are also not satisfactory like any other religious community. Even Hindus women are facing a lot of problem. So problems are there in Muslim society. Nobody is saying that social reform should not happen, but the charges made by Islamophobic person against Muslim and Islamic society, they are not based on concrete reality, but they came out of their prejudice, their stereotype, their illusion, their false narrative, and their politics to demonize Muslims community. That is very important. Why there is Islamophobia? Because propaganda is everywhere, and those propagandas are deliberately targeting Muslims community, and there is also political economy behind it also. Why Muslims are being criticized, being demonized? It is not the question of one individual thinking that Muslims are bad, but there is a system, there is a systemic design to portray Muslim as, what should I say, as fanatic, as fundamentalist, as not secular, anti-modern, anti-West, anti-development, anti-women, everything that is negative, that is being linked to Muslims community in Islam. After 1980s and 1990s, there has been a dangerous growth of Islamophobia, particularly in Europe, in America, and in Indian context also. The rise of Hindu right can also be dated to 1980s and 1990s. We have to keep in mind, those who are aware of South Asian history, that Shahbano case was taken up by the Hindu right. Religious conversion was politicized by the Hindu right, and also the demolition of historic Babri Masjid was also done in 1990, and the campaign for destruction and demolitions of Babri Masjid was being carried out in 1980s. So 1980s and 1990s, these were the decades when the rise of Islamophobia is very much seen. In 2000, we have also seen the whole discourse of war and terror started demonizing Muslims community. The Iranian revolution has also created a sense of anxieties among a section sitting in the West, that Muslims are coming, they are asserting themselves, they are becoming anti-West. So we have to fight them out. The disintegration of USSR in 1990, and after that the theory about clash of civilization by American scholar Huntington has started attacking Islam, criticizing Muslims community, and the discourse perpetuated by Huntington was very much directed at diverting the real issue of economic exploitation, and he brought culture to the center stage. So by projecting Muslims as anti-West, anti-democracy, anti-peace, by calling Muslims as fanatic, a threat to peace, a threat to liberal order, is to make people frightened about Islam. Such a scholarship has created prejudice against Muslims community, and later the powerful nations, they have attacked, invaded those Muslim countries. In 2004, then United Nations Secretary, General Secretary Mr. Kofi Annan has expressed concern over incidents of Islamophobia. So my point is that whatever decision was taken last year to observe March 15th as International Day to combat Islamophobia has also got its root. It is also a long discourse, and in 2004 it has been recognized that Muslims in the West and other places are being targeted. In the world today, the case of human rights violation against the Muslims is also rising. Right now I am speaking from New Delhi, and I am also keeping an eye on the situation in India. In India, Muslim community is a minority, although they are in large number and they are being attacked, they are being demonized by the Hindu right forces in this country. Why it is happening? Because the politics of Hindutva, the politics of Hindu nationalism is very much rooted in anti-Muslim agenda. So the Hindutva forces, in order to achieve political majority, needs to portray Muslim as the other of the Hindu society. We know it very well that the Hindu community is divided on caste, on class, on gender, language, culture, dress, way of living. They all are different. Even the way people living in one community worship will be very different from the way people from the same community worship in another region. So India is another name of diversity. So if there is so much diversity, if there is so much inequality, then the Hindutva forces will find it very difficult to get majority support. So to unite the majority community, it has to always portray Muslim as the other. So on social media, you open right now or any time, you will find that the Hindutva machinery, propaganda machinery, it is always active. It is spreading lies, propaganda, false reports, hateful speeches, and it is trying to portray Muslim as threat not only to Hindu community but also to India as a nation state. Last year there was a big controversy around the statement of a BJP leader on Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and even several activists living outside India, particularly in Muslim society, they took note of it, and the image of India being a secular country, being a multi-religious society has been affected. And our diplomatic relations also got strained. The government tried to run away from taking responsibility by saying that the remarks made against Prophet Muhammad was made by the fringe element. But the reality is that the so-called fringe element was very much part of the ruling establishment, and till today they are given all kinds of protection. So people who are attacking Muslims, people who are speaking against Islam and Muslims community, the elements who are creating hatred and other anti-Muslim remarks, they are being protected in this regime, while a sense of exclusion, a sense of alienation is rising among the Muslims community. So this is a cause of concern. This is a very critical situation in India also. And I would like, friends, you to share the experience of Islamophobic discourse elsewhere, because I do not know much about what is happening in other parts of the world. But it is very sad that Islamophobic discourse is rising. Friends, should I think that Islamophobic discourse is new? Should I think that just to arrest few people, Islamophobic discourse will be over? My reply would be yes and no, both. Yes, in a sense that if government follows constitution, if government follows liberal and secular values, and if it maintains rule of the law and gives protections to minorities, definitely the cases of Islamophobia will go down. Because the elements who are attacking Muslims, they somehow feel that they are given protections by the state. The day they will realize that they are no longer going to be protected, they are no longer going to be saved by the police, by the administration, by the politicians, by the political elite, then they will stop. They will not do it. Islamophobic discourse is maintained, is sustained at a systemic level. So, taking actions, maintaining law and order, punishing people who spread hatred, they will definitely give relief to minorities community, maintain peace in society. But these propagandas, these false histories are very much being taught in India also. The coming of the Hindu right has also started a new campaign, a new movement to rewrite history. This rewriting of history in India is called saffronization of history writing. The history is being communalized. Secular elements from the history textbook are removed and fundamentalist elements are being put in. But the role of secular historian should be not only to counter the recent perversion, but to also go back in history and challenge wherever there is misinformation, there is prejudice, there is wrong portrayal. And here I would like to refer to the colonial historiography. Why colonial historiography is important to be taken up seriously? Because our problem in South Asia has been very much created by colonial knowledge production. When the Britishers came here, history was written in a very systematic way. It was given all kinds of protection, and the historians promoted by the colonial state, the British Raj, were mostly colonial administrators. So they wrote history from the point of view, from the interest of the Raj. They did not write it from the interest of the people of India. Let me give you the example of James Mill. James Mill wrote History of India, and he divided Indian history into periods. The ancient period was called Hindu period. The medieval period was called Muslim period, and the British period was not called Christian period. So his prejudiced mind can be seen here, that the ancient India for him was Hindu, because in his thinking rulers belong to Hindu religious community. In medieval India the rule was Muslim, because rulers were from Islamic society. But if the modern period is ruled by the Britishers, and if their religion is Christianity, then why not this rule is also called Christianity? But he didn't say it, that this rule is Christian, is Christian period. For him it is secular, it is modern, it is progressive, but the previous rule is fundamentalist, religious, backward. But the sad part of such history writing is that James Mill's history writing is that the Hindu elites and the Muslim elites, they accepted the colonial narrative because they were trying to capture power. These colonial narratives, which is based on wrong interpretation of history, suited the narrow interest of the political elites of the Hindu societies and the Muslim society. Let me give you an example. The Hindu elites believed and accepted the colonial historiography, and it started propagating the false history that ancient India was Hindu India. So the narrative was being constructed that the authentic India is Hindu India. Hindus are the real sons of the soil. The real Indians were the Hindus, and all other peoples, particularly Muslims and Christians, they were all invaders. So they were not Indians. On the other hand, the Muslim elites started propagating this false narrative that they defeated Hindu community, they were victorious, they were rulers in the medieval time, and they are superior. That is also not true. Let me first talk about why the Hindu elites were wrong to say that ancient India was Hindu India. If we call that ancient India was Hindu India, then how do we account for the fact that ancient India saw the rise of world religion in the form of Buddhism? Buddhism, Jainism, they opposed Brahminism. Buddha opposed caste system. Buddha opposed hierarchy. Buddha opposed all kinds of power exercise, dominance, and he was for middle path, he was for welfare of the human being, he was for maitri, he was for the friendship, he was for the love, he was for the compassion. And Buddhism spread in India very fast. It spread outside India also. But Buddhism was crushed. Buddhism was defeated through a conspiracy. And what Ambedkar has said, that the Buddhist revolution was undone by the counter revolution by the Brahminical forces, and later Manu Smriti and other social codes were designed to further marginalize the lower caste, the Dalits and other marginalized community. Jainism is also opposed to Brahmanism. There is also diverse culture. in India present at that time also. For example, materialistic Charvak tradition. Even in this country, Sanskrit is glorified and it is said that it is mother of all the languages. But the fact is being denied that Tamil culture, Dravidian culture is as old as Sanskrit, if not older than Sanskrit. So Tamil, Dravidian culture, Buddhism, Jainism, materialistic philosophies, they were all there in the ancient time. And a large section of people living in subcontinent were the Adivasis, were the people of this country. They did not follow any organized religion. They have their own way of living, they have their own system of belief, and they were not part of the Brahmanical society. So, are they also part of Hindu society? No. So, my point is that the ancient India was very much Dravidian, very much Buddhist, very much Jain, very much materialistic. So to say that ancient India is Hindu India is also not correct. There was so much diversity, so much conflict present in those periods also. So it is only the colonial historiography and later the nationalist leaders who created the false narrative of golden Hindu rule. Similarly, the Muslim elites, they were also wrong. They somehow believe that they are the rulers of this country. They ruled over it. But the fact of the matter is, much before the so-called the Muslim rulers, or in the words of the Hindu fundamentalists, the Muslim invaders came to India, there was a close relationship between the Indians and the Arabs and the Iranians, the Persian people. Through trade, they were knowing each other. There was a system of marriage. The Arabs settled in Malabar coast, in Kerala. So, to reduce the history of India and Arabs and Iranians to war and conflict and political history is wrong. In 8th century, Muhammad bin Qasim came to Sindh and he became ruler there. But as far as South India is concerned, the Mughals were able to reach there to establish their rule in 16th century. It happened after Akbar. So, whatever we are looking at India as a political entity, that political entity was created post Akbar period. And the fact of the matter is that geographical boundaries are changing. They are changing. So, to say that Muslims ruled over the subcontinent in the medieval time is also not correct. To say that the medieval period was fanatic, that is also not true. In medieval period, several religious scriptures of Hindus, they were translated into Persian. Akbar was also responsible for translating several Hindu scriptures. Patronage was given to Hindus, and Akbar particularly was responsible for bringing Rajputs and Indian Muslims to his ruling elites category. In medieval time also, there was a rise, there was an emergence of composite music, composite culture, composite architecture, composite way of living. There was rise of vernacular language which was heavily influenced by Persians and Arabic. So we could see that in medieval time there has been a situation of composite culture. That is not to deny the fact that the majority of Muslims and Hindus who were the laboring classes, they were excluded, they were oppressed by the regimes. So to say that the medieval period was the Muslims period and the ancient period was Hindu period, that is not correct. Even the caste question was not addressed. The lower caste belonging to Muslims community or Hindus community, they were forced to work as a laborers. They were exploited whole through the period. So the point is to say that Muslims were the rulers and Hindus were the rulers in the previous period, that is not correct. And it is very sad that those false narratives created hatred, that created division among the society, and that led to partition. The subcontinent was divided and thousands people were killed. So my argument is that if we have to counter Islamophobia, we have to counter narrative, historical narrative as well. We have to teach scientific history, we have to teach students history that is based on reason, that gives much more attention to social and economic forces than to reduce that history to political history. Friends, before I conclude, let me also add one last point. Generally, it is being argued that in the name of Islamophobia, the discourse of social reforms within the Muslim community has been stopped. I would not fully accept this point, but I see some truth in this narrative also. It is true that Muslims are increasingly being targeted for several reasons, but there has also been a tendency among the powerful elites within the Muslim community that if you talk about the internal contradictions within the Muslim society, what will happen? They will say that you are Islamophobic. That is also not the correct approach. Islam has always promoted criticism, and there is always a space for social reforms within the Muslims community. So let me give you one example. Take the case of multiculturalism. The multiculturalism means that we have to respect the religious belief of people of different religions. But the marginalized community, be it Hindu community or Muslims community, the marginalized communities living in Hindu communities or Muslims communities, they have their own problem. They are being discriminated based on class, on caste, on gender, and in some cases untouchability is also being practiced. Some mosques are separated on the basis of caste. Even the graveyards are earmarked for different caste. It is happening. I would not say that it is happening everywhere, but this is also a sociological reality that some mosques, some graveyards are earmarked for their particular community. And even those people who are doing the work of sanitation worker, they are not given equal rights by the Muslim elite also. They cannot easily go and sit on their sofa. Some Muslim enlightened elites may allow, but it is also being reported that the Safai Karamchari, the sanitation workers, they also face discrimination. At the religious institutions of Muslims also, the lower caste are not given adequate representation. Women particularly, they are not very much visible as at Muslim religious and social institutions. And Islam promotes peace. Islam promotes a way of life that is moderate, but in some cases by the wrong interpretation of Islamic teaching, some religious institutes, educational institutes of Muslims also, they are also becoming intolerant. I will give you one example. Recently, a report came in newspaper that some students who shaved their beard in historic Deoband Madrasa in India, in Saharanpur, they were thrown out of the madrasa. That is wrong, because a person who carries beard, a person who doesn't carry beard, that will not determine whether he is a Muslim or not. The right to education cannot be denied because a particular student has kept beard or not kept beard. And I have talked to several Muslim scholars also about this, and they said that I am wrong. They say that in any institution you have to follow the dress code, and Deoband Madrasa is an Islamic institute, and in Islam we have to carry, what should I say, beard, and if you don't carry it, then you will be out of the university. Friends, I also read Quran. Nowhere it is written that a student who does not carry beard should be thrown out of the university and colleges. What the ulama has done, what the Maulana has done, they have read too much out of the holy book. So my point is that the Muslim society should fight against Islamophobia. All people, secular, peace-loving people, should stand in solidarity with Muslim to fight against Islamophobia. We all, whether we are Muslim or not, we must oppose Islamophobic discourse. At the same time, we should also request the Muslims community to not close the door of reforms, because if internal reforms are stopped, then what will happen? That the society will not go further. Friends, let me conclude by saying that the kind of capitalist exploitation is happening in this world, the way workers are being exploited, the way environment and natural resources are being exploited, and the way a state is acting as an agent of capital to suppress people, to silence their voices, that is creating much more anger among the people. People are increasingly questioning the legitimacy of the state. The state is seeing today very negatively than in the previous period. That is why you will see that the state is becoming more and more fundamentalist, more and more oppressive, more and more powerful, and most of its budget is being spent on security, on police, and on other security agency. Rise of the right-wing government is happening everywhere. It is not the phenomena of India. It is happening everywhere because the right-wing government, the powerful military and capitalist interest, they all in a state, they all come together to suppress the voices of the people, and to become successful in their design, they need a scapegoat. They need a scapegoat, and that scapegoat is Muslim. So the Islamophobic discourse is not coming out of the sky. It is not the creation of any one particular individual, but it is being designed deliberately so that people should not get united on economic and social issues. They want people to remain divided on religious lines. That is why Muslims are being portrayed as fundamentalists, as oppressors, and as anti-modern, and anything which is good in the West, the Muslim society represents the bad about the ideal world.